Execution means how you've overcome challenges. A really basic one is at the start when people are trying to find a manufacturer. For some reason, manufacturers are really hard to find of beauty products. It's like a little bit of a closed industry. And so how have you overcome that? Did you ask around? Did you email someone else that's got a beauty brand? But if you're just like, we've struggled to find a manufacturer and we've got one, you're still like, that's not trying hard enough. So that's what I mean the early stages for a solo entrepreneur, to show how you've overcome a challenge. Yeah, I looked at this, I rang 10 people instead. I wrote to an email, info@manufacturingcompany.xyz. If that's all you're doing, that's not good enough. But if you're like, I'm on the phone, I've rung this person, I've done this, and I think that comes out is, again, how they've overcome a challenge in the early stage of their business.
This is JumpStart, where women-led early-stage beauty brands learn counterintuitive insights to accelerate their profitability from $1 million to $100 million without spending a fortune on ads, agencies, influencers, and mindless distribution. With your host, Rohit Banota, ex-P&G and founder of the Toronto-based Jump Accelerator. Together, we can create a more humane, conscious, and beautiful planet, a woman's world. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell notifications.
Hey Sarah, I welcome you to What Beauty Founders Do Not Know podcast, which is all about what are those secrets, insights that beauty founders who aspire to grow big do not quite understand, or maybe find out too late, when it's too late for them to turn around or really make it big with their businesses. And for all my viewers and listeners, let me introduce Sarah to you. If at the age of 25 an Ivy League graduate was granted and guaranteed Sarah's career path, I'm pretty sure they would take it. I've gone through her resume. It's very elaborate. She was working in finance and marketing. She worked in London. Then she was the GM at Spin Magazine in New York. Then she ventured into entrepreneurship with Bella Box, a beauty subscription box, which has hundreds of thousands of followers on Meta. And the best thing about Bella Box has been growing double-digit quarter on quarter. I think that's very commendable. After that, she moved from an entrepreneur to an investor/entrepreneur advisor board member, 4 jobs in one. She's also mother to 3 small, beautiful children. I took her bio, maybe is slightly dated, so maybe they have grown up.
My eldest is 11, so 11, 9 and 8. So they are growing up.
I had to make do with what I saw on her bio on LinkedIn, which is a reminder that she can update that. She's also an advisor and co-founder and mentor for a hair care brand called Straand, which is turning scalp care on its head. She mentors and advises a brand called Stuff, which is about personal care and is tackling masculinity. She's also the head of private label at Beauty. And then she's an advisor and mentor at Mermaid Hair. Phew, it's like I said, all of these things packed in one. For someone to do all of this stuff as an individual is pretty sure she has a team. But yeah, Seth, over to you. Take us through your career transitions from finance, marketing, working for somebody else, then venturing into entrepreneurship and beauty. Beauty does not surprise me much because you were working for the magazine. I'm not stereotyping.
The funny thing is, so I always worked in finance, but for really fun companies. So I worked for a big restaurant group in Australia, now called St. Ali. It was my first job, a bookkeeper role. Then I moved into an ad agency and was their, business manager. And so I always worked in places where I could apply my financial sort of thinking to a tangible product. So something that I understood. I don't think I could ever have worked with a bank and understand financial instruments or anything like that. It was more so real world for me. So real world things that I understood and I could apply a financial and business management lens. And then obviously I moved to London. I worked for Dazed and Confused. So really got stuck into the magazine world. Not creative, so I didn't get to do the really fun stuff. It was more about how do you get those types of businesses to hopefully be profitable. And great to say I was in London recently and saw Dazed and Confused in another magazine still doing really well, and I feel like they were pioneers in the industry, so I feel really lucky to have seen such creative entrepreneurs in that world. Obviously then moved to New York and worked for Spin. Got a very quick musical education. I feel like my music tastes aren't as cool as they were when I was at Spin, but again, really funny, and moved into that more general manager role. I think the transition to entrepreneurship is driven by my family, and we had one point where no one was earning a salary, and I'm one of 4 children. So that was always around us. I think my first business venture was actually, now we're coming up to Christmas, making Christmas wreaths and selling them to our very willing neighbours. And then my commerce project that I did when I was in year 10 actually turned into a business. It was a home builders magazine that my dad ended up launching. I started that with my sister. So it was around. So that transition to the more finance and really fun industries to entrepreneurship was something that I'd had grown up with. The interesting part about the beauty side, I'm still hopeless at beauty. So luckily there's no camera on. If you saw how I apply makeup, it's absolutely shocking. It probably took me about 45 seconds.
It's better than mine. So
it is, yeah, exactly. But maybe just. I think you look great. I'm very lucky now to be surrounded by lots of guys and girls who are super passionate about beauty. I wasn't. I'm a bit hopeless at it. I love understanding what you're putting on your skin, making sure it's the right thing for you. But I really love the business side of beauty. So a little bit of a failure when it comes to makeup. Skincare, hair care is more my thing, but I still haven't worked out how to use my Dyson Airwrap. So I'm a work in progress in the beauty world.
like I said, to me, you're way ahead of me. You're ahead of the curve. All I do is I spike my hair. But anyway,
I think some of the Straand products would work well for you. I'm sure the serum would be nice and hydrating for your scalp.
Yeah, you're right. Scalp care, right? So yeah, it'll take care of my hair growth, etc., especially with my receding hairline.
Exactly. We need to, let's get on top of that for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. That was a very elaborate yet succinct introduction that you gave, and you covered everything. One point that you said here really piqued my interest when you said, I had to do entrepreneurship because of family, because there was a need. And I'll tell you, in my personal experience, I've spoken to thousands of beauty founders, if not more, over the last 5 years. Like every day I speak to beauty entrepreneurs. I always find that people who, I'm not saying you had no choice, but I would say when I find people or entrepreneurs who just had to do it or there was no other option, they do way better than people who somehow one day stumble onto an idea and go for the glamour of entrepreneurship. I don't have data, like I have not analyzed it with proper data if my hunch is right.
Yeah, and I agree. I think, so my parents were very big on accounting. I think it's such a really basic skill to have when you're an entrepreneur. So if that's around you and you're really like, there's not a lot of glamour associated with it. Hopefully as the brands, your companies get bigger, there's a bit more glamour, but certainly at the start, it's a lot of hard work and it's about understanding whether or not your product can be successful.
So I stand corrected. Are you saying that it was still a choice that you made?
I think it was more opportunity, but my point is because we were surrounded by it, I think it made it easier to transition and it felt like that was the natural progression of what I should do. So there wasn't like, I didn't wake up every morning being told that I need to be an entrepreneur. I woke up every morning and was told that I've got to be in the top 5% of everything that I did.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's what my folks told me too. Yeah, and I said, why not 1%? Perfect. That was very insightful, and I do stand corrected. It was more of a choice, and you wanted to excel at stuff that you want to do. Tell me one thing. You have been associated with so many different ventures, Bella Box, Straand, stuff, and quite a few others, and then you advise, and now you're an investor. So you moved from being an employee to an entrepreneur to an investor, mentor, advisor, etc. What are those one or two assumptions that you have when you were working with these brands? And you could take a single brand's case when it came to growing that brand, which proved absolutely wrong. And what was your learning? I'm pretty sure you learned from your mistakes and you did not make that mistake again. But if you did repetitively also make a certain mistake, you had an assumption, I would love that too. I'm not saying that you are somebody who would do that.
No, I don't mind. That's totally fine. And it's a good question. I think a mistake is always having assumptions. Like you have to be able to prove that your product's really good, for example. Like you can't just assume. So before Sand and Sky, we had a teeth whitening brand called Pop Smile, which launched at a very similar time to High Smile. So strong competition. And we had clinical studies that proved that it worked. And once we started selling it, our customers didn't think that it worked. So we'd made assumption about the product efficacy based on data, but that assumption should be proven through work within your team, etc. You need to prove any assumption, otherwise it might not work. So I suppose that's just one, is like you always need to understand exactly, don't look at the glamour of anything. Don't be like, oh yeah, I really want to get into clay masks because Sand and Sky did really well. Yeah, but you still need the best clay mask and you need to love your product. So I feel like that, any assumption, it needs to be proven or disproven by you as an entrepreneur and not something that you just take for granted. I think the other thing is you need a strong team. So I feel like an assumption that you can do it all alone is extremely hard in this current environment. I think there are a lot of brands that came out of backyards, etc., that did really well. But I actually think there's probably 4 key people that you need in a company in order for it to launch successfully and have an opportunity. So yeah, the assumption that the team is not important and you can do everything alone is something I 100% disagree with.
Pretty insightful. So you're very intrigued by the team thing. When do you think the time comes for someone to have a team? Because obviously some of the founders might not be able to afford a very big team, right? What if they're not funded? Then how do you decide bring in what kind of arrangement you can have with that team, etc.?
No, and it is really hard, absolutely, when you've started without any money. I think then your team becomes your friendship group, so you should be relying upon them to give you guidance on the branding, on the product, etc. So you use those people in the nicest possible way, and hopefully you're a great friend and they're happy to do that. I think the other thing is trying to find perhaps another co-founder that has skills that are different to you and then work out an equity arrangement. Every time you bring on someone, I'm really big on this, that they should bring you a certain amount of revenue. So whether that's through cost savings or actual revenue, it should be like, my next hire is an e-commerce director, and I expect that e-commerce director to bring in $1 million in the first year. And when you hire that person, you say, this is what the expectation is. So it's a little bit, it's like it's being strategic, but I think it's also like working with the assets that you have. So whether that be a friendship group or part of your company, you've got to be willing to give up some of that, because I think it's really hard at the start to work with such a tiny team, being just you, because you've got to move very quickly and you only get one chance with a customer, maybe 2. So you have to make sure that what you're proposing or what you're selling is going to get the customer excited and that you can manage the fulfillment of it.
Love it, love it. So first go after the most gullible, right? Friends and family. Try to use them as much as
you've got to be a good friend. Yeah, you've got to be, if you're a bad friend, then I can't help you out. But if you're a good friend, then your friends will pay you back, I'm sure.
What are friends for, right? If not for helping you out. Perfect. I know it's a dilemma, like for somebody who's starting out, money, it's a resource that you don't have. And it's a critical question to ask, where do I need people? I've struggled with this in my mind because there are 2 elements to growth. One is quality of the effort in anything that you want to do, and second is quantity. This is just my theory. I've realized that in today's world, maybe you can automate quantity, whether it's the reach out, whether it's the social, if you can. So, where you don't need much quality, if you can set system and process and you can automate, then do that. But when it comes to quality, because I don't know, we are there yet with AI, where AI can create or replicate the quality that a human can. I think there you'll need a team. And I think that's where resourcefulness comes into picture. Like you said, whether it's friends, family, can someone really get people to rally around their idea without the money that everybody expects to make, especially working with somebody. So it's tough, but I'm with you. I think that becomes critical. Awesome. Yeah. So how does the transition from an entrepreneur to an investor feel like? You become more of a teacher and you expect great stuff from others, because you are investing money, but you're not in the trenches anymore. And there is a role for everybody. Obviously, you're giving the biggest resource, money, provide the access to capital, like I said. But how has your role changed? And obviously, you have worked as an entrepreneur. So is it like you have more empathy? You understand the situation?
Yeah. 100% I have more empathy for everyone that's doing it. And I think I try to get involved with brands that I feel like I can add value. And I try to be upfront about the value that I can add. So I agree, it's not really in the trenches. Like today, I've got a meeting with the head of e-com of stuff. And so she'll present to me her ideas and then I go through that with her. So there is a little bit of that strategic side as well and trying to help out. But you're very much on the receiving end of information. And what I found, it's so much easier to give feedback than it is to do the execution. I'm always really aware of that. And yeah, so it's making sure as I make that transition that I'm always adding value. I say to the Mermaid team all the time, I'm like, you're not getting enough from me, then let me know. Like, what can I do? So I feel like I'm a little bit of a sponge for that. And I try to help out between brands without revealing anything proprietary. So if there's something going on, I'm like, cool, actually, I think you'll help out. And I am honest with that about the information that I'll give away. So yeah, it does feel like it's more about connecting the dots and less about the execution, but always making yourself available for any of executional type related questions.
And I think the biggest insight, and I'm not saying that you don't do this, but I think one of the biggest insights for me, the value that an investor would bring, especially an entrepreneur who's made it herself, is that you can look at the end goal, what all it takes. Because and the reason that I've named this podcast earlier, I was calling it JumpStart, but now I call it
Okay.
what beauty founders don't know, because I think people want it, they just don't know what it takes to really become successful. You know it, and I've seen that too when I speak to beauty founders. Like some of them have absolutely no clue. I'm reminded of the movie Clueless, which every woman loves. Okay, so they are clueless, absolutely clueless. And it's not their fault, but I think that is where somebody like you would have so much value to add because you've been there and done that.
But I feel like that strategy is still forming in my mind. So even though I've been there and done that a little bit, it does change with every year. And I actually met with two advisors when I was in London, and I was saying to them, what do you think a beauty brand in the current day and age, what elements does it need to have? So it does change. And I think for me, I'm just always looking at being open to those changes. And then I share that. I'm like, hey, this is what the market is now telling us. So where do we fit into those pillars? So it's always having that macro view on the current environment, and then hopefully, and it's also discussing with them is like, where do they want, what's the exit, what is the plan? And I feel like maybe when we started Bella Box, you didn't talk about exits as much, especially women. It was more about, I want to create this great brand that does this and rah. And I feel like that now is changing. I know as a brand owner, I can get the company to X, and then that's when I want to exit. So I love that sort of conversation now, that it's something that's being upfront with brands, which I think is quite a big change.
I do agree with you that people do know now with a lot of knowledge and people reading books, etc., following case studies, interactions, the amount of interaction between people. I'm hoping, again, just my hunch. Even we have come together because of social media. So I'm sure the networks are getting stronger with the environment that we live in. And people do know, I'm not denying that the curve has not gone up at all. Perfect. So what's your entrepreneurial thesis?
I suppose the entrepreneur is still, you're almost starting with something you're really passionate about typically. So you're like, there's a gap, I have passion here, and I know that I'm the best person to be able to execute on that passion. I think I still, between entrepreneur and investor, it's for me the unit economics. So how do you come up with something that you can make money? I think even with Bella Box, we had slimmer margins at the start because we were like, oh, that's still a lot of money. Like we was looking at volume of money as opposed to the unit economics. And I think it's the main 2 points. But I think the investor is more, I'm now really, where is the white space? So where is the opportunity? Do you have the team to execute, and why? What have they done before? What's, again, their passion? So what's driving them? And are they going to not kill themselves, but are they going to work super hard? If this is a part-time gig for them, no. Are they going to do what I've done previously to make a company work? Sort of supposed to be able to flip between the two. But yeah, they would be my main differences. It's almost passion, and then the investor side, it's really like, yeah, are you the team? Are you the person to be able to take this company to where it needs to go?
Absolutely. I'm an absolute believer in what you are saying. I think it doesn't matter whether the idea is disruptive, wondering about people are going to adopt or not, because if the founder is really driven, she has it in her, she will adapt. She will change course, she will be determined, and she will have her eyes fixed on the end price. So what's a typical red flag?
I think red flag from an investor point of view is lack of passion and lack of knowledge. So if I'm talking to a brand in Australia and they don't know about their competitors in the US, they don't have a global view of their brand, that's a massive red flag to me. So it's like super knowledge of everything. So I want to learn. So I meet with someone, I want to learn it's about a new industry or a new product that I haven't worked on before, then I expect them to be able to answer every single question. And I love when people are like, have you seen this brand? I've followed this. Have you seen this influencer doing that? So coming and showing that passion, I think, is really important. And I keep going back to the team and their ability to execute, but also their drive to execute. So what is their work ethic? I think is so important to come across is I'm going to do everything to make this brand work. And if I don't feel like that, then there's two red flags. And they're quite broad ones, but they're ones that I'm looking at initially.
I'll poke a little bit on all three that you gave me. You gave me three. The second one had two parts to it: ability to execute and drive to execute. And the first one was passion, which you equated to knowledge. So this knowledge has to be about the problem that they are solving. Have they thought through how they're going to succeed, what channel they're going to go, what price they're going to have, why they're going to have that, how will they make money, profitability. So in the end, everything, right? So
that's why I said it was quite broad. But I think it's, yes, all those elements, but I think it's being able to speak intelligently to that. Like, I've seen this, these guys are doing that. I want to do this part from this brand. Showing that passion, and you need that knowledge about what else is going on in your space and why you think there's opportunity there. So it is broad. And the financial side, I think if they haven't launched yet, there's something you can tweak with them. So even if they're looking at their RRP, that should be compared against current brands. It should be under or over based on whatever their strategy is. So it doesn't need to be like, here's my P&L and I'm going to get it right. But it just needs to be like, this is what the market's doing. I think I can do this based on COGS, etc. So it's not as deep, but it's more so having that wide-ranging knowledge.
No, I get it. That's a wonderful insight, Sarah. So you're saying they should have thought through it. They should have some framework for it. Even if it's slightly high level, it's fine. But at least they are considering all of that stuff, because knowledge will obviously, with iteration, they will get deeper. But at least they know about all of that stuff and they think about it. And sometimes it needs refinement. That's all right. Perfect. I love it. Now coming to the second 2 points, ability to execute and drive to execute. Drive will be work ethic. Ability to execute. What is execution? Everybody speaks about it. And I keep downloading books on execution. And usually all the literature that exists is with the perspective of big companies, corporates. How can a solopreneur, what does it mean? Or an entrepreneur who has a 7-figure beauty brand and now has some infusion of money Sarah has given her. What does execution mean?
Execution means how you've overcome challenges. A really basic one is at the start, when people are trying to find a manufacturer. For some reason, manufacturers are really hard to find of beauty products. It's like a little bit of a closed industry. And so how have you overcome that? Did you ask around? Did you email someone else that's got a beauty brand? But if you're just like, we've struggled to find a manufacturer and we've got one, you're sort of like, that's not trying hard enough. So that's what I mean at the early stages for a solo entrepreneur, to show how you've overcome a challenge. Yeah, I looked at this. I rang 10 people. I wrote to an email, info@manufacturingcompany.xyz. If that's all you're doing, that's not good enough. But if you're like, I'm on the phone, I've rung this person, I've done this, and I think that comes out is, again, how they've overcome a challenge in the early stage of their business.
That's the best answer I've ever received for what is execution. Yeah. And I just downloaded a book on... Sorry?
I said you can download my book. Only joking.
Download a book by Ram Charan. There's this book on Audible, which is considered to be the mecca of execution. And they bored me for 20 minutes talking about stuff that I'm not interested in. Get to the meat, man. Like, tell me what it is. And I think this was brilliant. And I also spoke to, in one of my previous episodes, Christina Nunez. She's one of the partners in Unilever Ventures. And I didn't ask her exactly this question, but she was saying that the founders who just do not accept no as an answer and they find their way. So I think both of your responses are very aligned, and I have my answer today. I have the insight. Execution for a solopreneur or an early stage entrepreneur means finding your way out of any challenge that you face, one way or the other, right?
I know. And it's funny, when I moved back from New York to start Bella Box, we were giving product away at an event. And New York moves a lot faster than what Melbourne does. But I found it was 5 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I found a courier company, and they were called Rapid Couriers. And when I rang to courier these 100 boxes, they were like, we close in 10 minutes. And I was like, how can you call yourselves Rapid? And all the girls in the office were like, that's really embarrassing. But I remember being like, I'm like, that's not Rapid. And they ended up delivering it for us, because I was just like, you can't call yourself that and then not deliver on time. I need you to be Rapid Couriers. So I think that sort of like tenacity is what sets people apart, that you're just like, what? I'm not being like, oh, okay, cool. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye. It's no, I'm going to try and find a solution and win you over by paying out your company name.
I agree. Whatever it takes. And I also get sometimes frustrated. I would tell founders, go and interview a few. Oh, I sent a few emails. Nobody responded. Send more. Give them a phone call. Send them a text. Go to their houses, knock on their door. Take a few free products, right? So just do it, man. Like, I know it can be frustrating. And it is to help them out too, right? It is for their own sake. Execution, that means, has an element of attitude to it. God, we can write a book on execution. You can. I keep asking you questions.
With all the people that you've spoken to, I'm sure you could.
Thank you. Yeah, I could take their quotes. Obviously, I would attribute it to people like you, but I will make the money in the end, right? So yeah, I could do that.
That's okay.
So have you seen beauty founders who do everything right, super hungry, the right attitude, find a solution to any problem, sacrifice, listen, and focus, still fail? And is there an insight there?
I think I don't know that I've got exact examples of those that have failed, but what's on my mind at the moment is, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, but that exit. So sometimes founders are doing everything, they're scaling. They need to understand what they can get the company to and when they need additional help. And that's part of that exit or investment. And I think there's great brands around, and I don't want to name names because these are my assumptions based on brands, but the founders probably stayed too long. And at some point, maybe you can't manage a 50 million or 100 million turnover business, and that's okay. That is totally okay. And for you to get help in at that point, that would be my thing. Not just your limitations, but when you're like, cool, oh my God, great, I've done a really good job getting it here, to get to the next level. Is that me, or is that someone else, or that is an investor or an exit? I feel like they're the parts that sometimes beauty founders can fall down because they're not willing to accept that. They're like, this is me, this brand, and it's not forever.
So is it ego? Is it insecurity? Is it the fact that I built it and this is my life? Or maybe this is the only thing I could do, so why let go of it? I want my legacy, etc. Like, what would you attribute it to?
Yeah, potentially. I can't say I'm inside the head of all those people that make those decisions, but that must be it. And I'm lucky to be older now, so maybe I'm less protective of what is going on, but I feel like that's the element that people need to be able to know when it's time for them to step back. You can still be a director. There's still elements where you can be involved in that brand, but that forward looking and being like, what are the competition doing? Where do I need help? I think that, and is this me, should always be the question, I feel like, for a beauty founder. And the answer might be yes, and they can do whatever they want, but it might be no, and they need extra help.
Very insightful. Quite a few of your answers are like really adding to that book that I will write one day. Now, let's move to the next section, and we have two more sections. The last will take a couple of minutes. This section is all about when the going gets tough. I am very interested personally in this question. Has there been a time in your entrepreneurial journey where it seemed like it's going to blow up big time? It's blow up means it's going to go down in a big flash, so to say. It's not going to happen. It's all over. Have you had such a time? And how could you pull through?
So I think it's probably one example from my working life. So when I was in the magazine industry in 2011, I was really struggling. So people moving to digital, and I still felt, and this is my work ethic, every morning I got up and I'm like, what else can I do? What can I change? And I never went in with, I was never defeated. And I think it's the same, even with Bella Box, we were raising money. The second time when Fairfax was buying 50% of the company, I was about to have a baby and I was trying to run a company, be pregnant, like literally with one day to go, and then wrangle a lot of lawyers. And I just totally broke down, cried. My mum lives about an hour from Melbourne, so I rang her up and said, I need you to come to Melbourne because I just can't handle it anymore. And I had a young daughter who was not even 2 as well. And it's still my volition and I suppose my tenacity that I'm like, okay, cool, what is next? What else can I do? And that's the only time I've broken down. But I was just like, every morning then I get up, I like to exercise in the morning and I'm like, what can I do next? How do I solve this problem? And it's also by confronting the problem. I think if you ignore the problem, you're never going to solve it. If you're like, shit, excuse me, it's about to go down. Okay, sit down. So what else can we change? What expenses can we cut? How can we increase revenue? Asking all those questions as opposed to being afraid of the problem is what I would suggest.
Very interesting. Before I ask the next follow-up, how do you deal? What's your immediate reaction? Is it like you go back, you drink a glass of wine, you go for a walk, you take a day off, or you do have that curve of, oh my God, what have I done? This is all going to go down, etc. Or is it like you get hit and you get up and you're like, no, I'm going to solve it? What kind of person are you?
I don't take a day off, but I think my best thinking is in the morning. So yeah, I probably would have had a sleepless night the night before, absolutely worrying about it. And then it's always the next morning where I get that clarity and I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? And so I said, I'd like to exercise. If I'm going for a walk or something like that, then I can think through the problem. And then I'm like, cool, okay, this is what we're going to do. So it's the morning time for me. And also knowing that no challenge is insurmountable. It's just something you need to be able to work through. And that's blind faith in what you're doing and also your ability to execute. That gets you there.
Very interesting. I love the fact that he said you need to think through in the morning. You have slept over it. Your mind also got some chance. Tell me one thing. Asking someone else, one, walking and thinking on your own, two, or going to Google. Out of these three, how would you rank them in terms of helping you out of a challenge, so to say?
I feel like for the majority of my life, it's been that going for a walk and then asking someone else. Google hasn't featured enough maybe, but I feel like now it's I really lean into those around me and I feel like I share problems a lot more. So yeah, now it's ask someone else, go for a walk, and then I suppose I'm always Googling. So I don't know. I don't know that I'm Googling anything new.
Perfect. Now moving on to a speed round. Sarah, your answer was absolutely brilliant. I think this is the first time I had somebody who has been an entrepreneur and an investor. on this
cool.
podcast. So I think the balance of opinion, insight that you're bringing are really amazing. Speed round 1, 2, 3 word answer association. You're an Australian, so you can use an expletive if you want to. You're totally allowed. You can say whatever you want, but it's just for fun, but also just to see, what your thoughts are. So no filters. Don't worry about being politically correct. What's fake in early stage beauty investing?
What's fake? That's a good question. What do you mean what's fake? Give me an example.
90% of VC funded brands in the early stage do not make it. Now, I don't know when people say that Y Combinator says 70% of our brands fail.
Yeah.
So now we don't know what the definition of failure is. What happens in the end, nobody knows. I don't have data, like I said. And you never know whether that founder second time round did well. So you cannot call it a complete failure. So we don't know all that stuff, right? But generally, why is it that this happened? And I've always thought about it because my thesis is that everybody wants to go for that unicorn. Why not democratize? If only 10% of the beauty brands or your ventures are going to make it, then if you do the maths, if you make 6 or 7 succeed, but not by such big margins, and you multiply each one of them together, won't you make the same amount of money? You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that was my earlier point too, sorry to digress, is that, knowing when to exit, I think is really important because you're right. Everyone wants to get to a certain number, but there's a whole opportunity for a group of brands that are not at that number to then sell to someone else who's got brands to those numbers. So, I think that I've seen that 70% fail. I think what is fake or what I don't believe is that I think there's a lot of early stage investors that come in and take control of the company and think that will be successful. I think it has to be the opposite, that the founder needs to retain majority control and they need to be really incentivized along the way. I don't like that your exit is in 3 years. I think there should be milestones along the way for that founder because the founder typically hasn't been paid, blah, 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 blah. So if there's a founder along the way and they get to buy a car or buy a house, that will motivate them. So I think that a founder, especially young, they're motivated to keep killing themselves for the next 3 years. I think that's a little bit fake as well. You need to find milestones that then spur them on to the next phase. So there's 2 fake ones for you.
I'll give you in 2 words what is fake in early stage beauty market according to me.
Yeah.
Founder first. I hear it every time. You are in the best position because you have been an entrepreneur, so you get it, right? But I see it written and used so many times. Founder first. We are a founder first fund, and when I speak to the people that they've invested in, they add one more F to it, which I'm not going to say here. But So anyway, second thing, what is your favorite movie line, quote, book of all time?
I still love Dirty Dancing, so I don't know. I need to think of a Patrick Swayze line, but yeah.
What was? Remind me. I love that guy. I like his hairstyle. I don't think anyone in Hollywood has had the hairstyle.
Yeah, it's my guilty pleasure to watch that. Next time I'll think of a line that comes from that movie, but I love it. Thinking about Dirty Dancing, so I can't think of a line.
Yeah, I can do all types of moonwalks, by the way. Yeah, I used to.
I don't think that made it into Dirty Dancing, but if you can do the lip.
Yeah, I won't. Yeah, of course, it won't make it into Dirty Dancing. Yeah. I agree. You already did ask this question. I was like, democratize beauty or moonshots only? And you are for democratization or no?
I am. I think there's still lots of opportunity in spaces. So democratize beauty for sure.
I think it's just people like to feel good and the fear of missing out. Beauty subscription boxes in US, there are every second day I hear one opening, one starting a new beauty subscription.
I don't know why they're still opening.
Well, one word for beauty subscription boxes.
Oh, hard. Tight margins, yeah.
Everything is hard.
What's happening is, especially there's a great retailer in Australia called Mecca, and they do their own beauty boxes. Yeah, and so this is my point about what's going on in the competition. I think probably with Fellobox we should have aligned with a retailer earlier, if I can think about it in hindsight. But it is tough to be able to do, and especially with sustainability top of mind, you're sending out a lot of product all the time. So you need to make sure that it's really targeted.
Perfect. So work-life balance, life around work or work around life? Just pick one.
Life around work.
Wow, I love it. Very original. Favorite beauty brand?
Oh, Gisou. So the honey-based one, Gisou. I just literally found out how to pronounce it.
Now I know too, right? So would you rather be a poor pioneer or a rich replica?
Old. I'm too old. Rich replica.
That's so honest. I love it. If somebody asked me, I would say poor pioneer.
Past my 20s and 30s.
Perfect. We have come to the end of this wonderful, insightful episode. Sarah, Thank you so much for being on this episode. Your insights were just absolutely amazing. Give your message to the viewers or listeners, how they can reach you, anything, if they want some advice on investing or with their ventures, etc.
Probably the best is LinkedIn. My social accounts are private just because I have no time to manage social, and maybe my life isn't that exciting. But yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate you being on this episode. You have a wonderful, morning in Australia?
Yes, it is morning. So it's 10 o'clock in the morning right now.
Perfect. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much. Cool. Thanks, Rohit.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to this JumpStart podcast for amazing guests and insights on growing your beauty brand. Visit jumpaccelerator.com and take the quiz today to find out how ready you are to make that jump to more than $20 million. While you're there, don't forget to apply for your free 40-day trial. Till the next episode.